She had learned the sound of winter the way other women learned lullabies. It creaked in the cabin walls. It sighed through the pine trees. It whispered across the frozen plain like a promise never kept. Eliza Mayfield stood at her window. As the first snow of the season began to fall, her breath fogging the glass. 20 winters had passed since the day Caleb Rourke rode away from this valley, his back straight, his eyes full of words he never said. 20 winters of waiting, praying, and burying hope beneath the chores of survival. She was no longer the girl who had waved from the porch. She was a woman carved thin by time, loss, and quiet strength. The town of Red Hollow still called her the widow, though she had never worn black for a husband. Her mourning was older, quieter. It wore the shape of absence. That afternoon, Red Hollow stirred with an unease it had not felt in years. A rider was coming. Children stopped their play. Dogs went silent. The sheriff stepped out of his office, hand resting near his belt. The man on horseback moved slow, like each mile cost him something precious. His coat was dark, stained in places not easily explained. His hat sat low, shadowing a face that had known too much sun and worse things than sun. Blood marked his sleeve. Eliza felt it before she saw him. A tightening in her chest. A memory stepping closer. When the rider stopped in front of the saloon, the horse trembled. The man dismounted with care, favoring his left side. He lifted his head, and time folded in on itself. Caleb Rourke had come home. He looked older than his years, his jaw rough with gray. His eyes carrying a weight that made men step back without knowing why. His gaze passed the sheriff, the saloon doors, the gathered faces until it found her window. For a moment, neither moved. Then Eliza's knees gave way, and she gripped the sill to stay upright. 20 winters, and now he stood there with blood on his hands. Caleb remembered that window. He had pictured it in foxholes and desert camps, under foreign skies and gunfire that echoed like judgment. He had promised himself he would return clean, worthy, forgiven. He had failed. The sheriff approached slowly. Name? Caleb swallowed. Caleb Rourke. The name rippled through the crowd like a stone in water. Thought you were dead, someone muttered. Would have been kinder, Caleb replied. The sheriff's eyes dropped to the blood, you heard? Some of it's mine. And the rest, Caleb hesitated just long enough for Eliza to notice. That pause cut deeper than any wound. I need a doctor, he said, and a place to lay low. The sheriff studied him, then glanced toward Eliza's cabin on the edge of town. Everyone knew she took in strays children, broken men, lost souls passing through. Kindness had become her reputation and her burden. Eliza stepped outside before fear could stop her. The cold bit through her shawl as she walked toward him. Each step felt like crossing years she had tried to forget. Caleb, she said. He turned fully then, and the sound of her voice nearly undid him. Eliza, he whispered, tipping his hat the way he always had, even when he was young and careless. You waited. Her eyes searched his face. I buried you, she said softly. Every winter, I know. She looked at the blood again. Did you come back to bring death with you? Caleb's voice broke. I came back because I couldn't carry it alone anymore. Silence wrapped them tight. The sheriff cleared his throat. There's word of trouble coming this way. Men looking for someone. Might be looking for him. Eliza closed her eyes. After a long moment, she opened them and nodded once. He can stay with me. The sheriff frowned. You sure know, she said. But I'm certain. That night, Caleb lay on a narrow bed by candlelight as Eliza cleaned his wounds. His skin was cold, scarred in places she did not recognize. She worked carefully, her hand steady despite the storm inside her chest. You should have stayed gone, she said. I tried, he replied, but blood follows a man. She met his eyes, whose Caleb looked away. Jaw tightening. Outside, the wind howled, and somewhere far off, a horse screamed. They're coming, he said. And when they do, you'll wish you'd never opened that door. Eliza tied the bandage and stepped back. I waited 20 winters, she said quietly. I can face one more storm. A knock thundered against the cabin door. Not a friendly one. Caleb reached for the gun he no longer carried. And Eliza realized, too late, that the past had finally found them both.
The knock came again, harder this time, splintering the quiet like a rifle crack. Eliza did not move at first. She stood between the door and the man on the bed, her shadow tall in the candlelight. For 20 winters she had lived by listening wind, wolves, loneliness. This sound was different. It carried intent. "Don't answer," Caleb whispered, his voice hoarse. He tried to sit up, pain flashing across his face. "They won't stop with questions." Eliza lifted a hand, silencing him. Her eyes stayed on the door. "You don't get to decide that anymore." She crossed the room and opened it. 3 men stood on her porch, coats dusted with snow, guns worn low and familiar on their hips. Not lawmen. Their eyes were sharp in the lamplight, measuring the cabin, the woman, the truth hiding behind her. The tallest one smiled without warmth. "Evenin', ma'am. We're looking for a man passed through town today. Road and bleedin'." Eliza met his gaze steadily. "Lots of men bleed out here." The smile faded. This one left bodies behind him. Behind her, the floor creaked. Caleb knew the sound meant it was already too late. He swung his legs over the bed and stood, swaying but upright. The candlelight caught his face and recognition sparked like flint. "There he is," the man said. "Told you he'd hole up with the widow." Eliza turned, shock flickering across her features, not at seeing Caleb, but at the way the man spoke his name like a verdict. Caleb stepped forward, placing himself beside her. "This don't concern her." The tallest man laughed. "Everything you touch concerns everyone." Eliza's voice hardened. "If you have business, speak it. Otherwise, leave my land." The man tilted his head. "You don't know who you're sheltering." "I know enough," she said. "I know a man who came home broken." "Broken men break others," the man replied. Caleb swallowed. "They're right about one thing," he said quietly. "I did spill blood." Eliza turned to him, eyes searching. "Why?" He hesitated, the weight of years pressing down. "Because I was told it was justice." The men shifted, impatient. "We rode with him once," the tallest said, "back when he believed in causes and flags. Then he figured out who was really giving the orders." Eliza felt the truth unfolding like a bruise. Caleb's voice dropped. "They were gonna hang a boy, 15, accused of stealing horses he never touched. You shot 3 men, one of them snapped." "You ran." "I saved a life," Caleb said, "and lost my own." The tallest man stepped closer. "You don't get to decide whose blood matters." Eliza stepped forward now, placing herself between them again. "You won't take him from here." The man studied her. "You always were stubborn," her breath caught. "You know me?" He nodded. "Red Hollow ain't as forgotten as you think." Snow thickened the air between them. Somewhere beyond the trees, hooves shifted. The man backed away slowly. "We'll be back by morning." With law this time or rope. When they were gone, the cabin felt smaller, the walls thinner. Eliza closed the door and leaned against it, trembling. "You should leave," she said at last. "Before daylight." Caleb shook his head. "Running's what got me here." She turned on him. "You don't get to turn my life into a battleground." "I never wanted this," he said, anguish plain. "I wanted to see if you were alive, to say I was sorry." "For what?" she demanded. "For leaving," he said. "For choosing duty over you. For surviving when I shouldn't have." Silence stretched. At dawn, Eliza saddled the old mare she kept for winter runs. Caleb watched from the porch, guilt twisting inside him. "I'm going to the sheriff," she said. "Tell him everything." Caleb stiffened. "If you do, they'll kill that boy anyway. They'll bury the truth." She met his eyes. "Then tell me the rest." So he did. He told her about the camp, the orders whispered intense, the way men learned to stop asking questions. About the night he saw the boy shaking under the gallows. About the shot he fired and the men who fell. "I couldn't unsee it," Caleb said. "Couldn't keep riding like it didn't matter." Eliza listened, tears freezing on her lashes. When he finished, she said softly, "You came back because you were tired of being alone." "Yes." And because you hoped someone would still see good in you. Yes, she nodded once. Then we'll face this together. Before Caleb could answer, a rifle cracked in the distance. The Mari screamed and went down in the snow. Eliza fell to her knees beside the dying animal. Caleb turned toward the tree line, eyes blazing. They had come sooner than promised. And this time, they weren't knocking.
The second shot tore through the morning like a judgment bell. Caleb moved before thought could catch him. He pulled Eliza away from the fallen mare as snow exploded beside them, the bullet biting into frozen earth where her head had been. Her breath came sharp and fast, but she did not scream. She had learned long ago that fear made noise, and noise got people killed. Inside, Caleb said, steady despite the chaos. They reached the cabin as a third shot cracked, splintering the porch rail. Caleb shoved the door shut and slid the heavy table against it. His hands moved with practiced calm, the kind that came from years of surviving when others didn't. Eliza pressed her back to the wall. How many? At least 4, he said. Maybe more. She met his eyes. And you? He lifted his coat and revealed the revolver strapped beneath hold. Worn, carried like a burden rather than a weapon. Enough. The men outside shouted now, voices carried by wind and confidence. They believed the valley already belonged to them. Caleb stepped to the window and fired once low, deliberate. A cry answered back, sharp and human. Silence followed. Then boots in the snow. Circling, they'll burn us out, Eliza whispered. Caleb looked at her, really looked, and the years fell away. The girl who waited, the woman who endured. I won't let them take this from you. You already gave me 20 winters, she said softly. Don't waste them. He nodded once. When the door finally gave way, it happened fast. Smoke, splintered wood, shouts swallowed by gunfire. Caleb moved through it like a man already forgiven, each shot chosen, each step purposeful. He took a bullet in the shoulder and kept moving. Another grazed his ribs. Pain was familiar. Purpose was not. One man fell near the hearth. Another fled into the trees. The tallest, the one who knew Eliza, stood bleeding in the doorway, rage burning through the shock. You think this makes you righteous? Caleb lowered the gun. No, he said. It makes me finished. The man laughed weakly. Lol, hang you. Caleb shook his head. Not today. He fired. When it was over, the snow had stopped falling. The silence felt earned. Caleb sank to the floor, blood pooling dark against the wood. Eliza was beside him in an instant, hands shaking as she pressed cloth to his wounds. Stay with me, she whispered. You don't get to leave again. He smiled faintly. Guess I'm a poor listener. By the time the sheriff arrived with townsfolk close behind, the truth came with him. Not rumors. Proof. Papers taken from the men. Names. Orders. The boy's testimony carried on a folded letter stained with travel and hope. The sheriff read it twice, then looked at Caleb. You stopped a hanging. Caleb nodded. And started a mess. The sheriff holstered his gun. Sometimes, justice does. Caleb survived the night. Barely. Winter stretched long, but it did not feel endless anymore. Word traveled. The men who hunted Caleb were exposed for what they were. The boy was returned to his family. Red Hollow remembered how to breathe again. Caleb healed slow. Each scar stayed. He did not ask for forgiveness. He worked mending fences, splitting wood, keeping to himself. He slept in the small room by the hearth, where candlelight warmed the nights. Eliza watched him from the window she had waited beside for 20 winters. One evening, as the snow melted into mud and the first signs of spring pressed up through the earth, Caleb stood on the porch with his hat in his hands. "I won't blame you if you ask me to go," he said. "I've brought enough trouble for one lifetime." Eliza stepped beside him, looking out at the valley they had both survived. "I didn't wait all those winters for you to leave again," he swallowed. "I don't know how to be the man you deserved." She reached for his hand, steady, warm, real. "Neither did I, we'll learn." Caleb nodded, tears he did not fight shining in his eyes. That night, the cabin glowed softly against the dark, not as a place of waiting, but of living. And when the next winter came, Eliza did not stand alone at the window. She sat by the fire, listening not to absence, but to the quiet sound of a man who had finally come home.